that GitLab so far has added support for continuous scanning for the registries, which means that you can have an artifact in a container or a package in your GitLab project, and there's continuous scanning that happens that's looking for known vulnerabilities, and they're always adding new data to that as well. They're adding a EPSS score, a KEV score. I know a risk score is on their roadmap for later this year. And so the idea is that you're able to create policies that continuously scan all of your artifacts. Where the virtual registry fits in is it's basically a gate in between when packages are downloaded from the public internet, likely from the public registries or maybe from an upstream Artifactory instance or something like that. And the filter exists before it enters your GitLab instance. And so let me show, it's less of a demo and more of, because we haven't built it yet, and more of just like a clickable prototype design that we have. And maybe first I'll just highlight our roadmap and then go into the prototype. And then if we have any questions or if we talk through specific Collins use cases, that would be great as well. Okay. So first, to start with our roadmap, it's a busy slide. This is I have fiscal quarters here. Sorry, I should change this to calendar. It's basically off by 1 month. So this is 2025 Q1, 2025 Q2, Q3, and then Q4. And the 10 polls that I want to highlight on here that are really relevant for this conversation are what we're working on right now is a virtual registry for Maven. So a virtual registry allows you to define and configure an ordered list of upstream and local repositories so that when a developer goes to install a Maven package, it will go through that ordered list to resolve them. So it'll say, okay, first look in my GitLab instance, then look in Maven Central, then look in Artifactory, then look in Sonatype, and there's caching involved there as well. So this is a key feature for us to build the firewalls, to actually create robust support for upstream repositories. And then the firewall will sit in between the virtual registry, which is pulling from upstreams, and your local GitLab environment, where it will filter out vulnerabilities. So right now we're working on this for next quarter. So sometime between April and June, we'll add support for a Maven virtual registry with multiple upstreams. And then in Q4, we'll do the same thing for NPM. And that's, and where is it here? I don't see it here, but there should be on Q3, basically the same thing for the container registry. Oh, here it is, virtual registry for containers. So right now we support proxying and caching from Docker Hub, but we need that to work in a similar way where you could set that ordered list and connect to any of the major container registries. So ECR, Artifact Registry, Quay, as examples. So the firewall is something that we'll see we'll start to launch in Q3, and at the minimal set of features, something that we need to add is a simple allow deny list. So being able to say this package name version coordinates should never be allowed in our GitLab environment. And to use an old but popular example, if you wanted to filter out that log4j package from Maven, you could do that. Or this seemingly simple feature, talking to a couple of our customers, are like, this is like 95% of our use case. Just someone tells me don't allow this anymore, and they add it to a deny list and they filter it out. But beyond that, in Q4, what we really want to get to is this filtering out packages with known vulnerabilities. So like, as an example, this is the clickable prototype I was talking about, but it really mimics our GitLab project here. If I go to secure, and then I could see policies, and I go to create a new policy, I could see that there's actually 4 types here. So what we'll do with the firewall is add a new type of policy called the Dependency Firewall. And this allows you to name it, to add a description, to enable it or disable it. You can also have it cascade from the the top level group down. So all projects within the group will get this policy. And then you can choose when it runs, what package formats does it run on. So for this example, let's say Maven and NPM, you could also say all. And then you can say, okay, what is the minimum severity that will kick in this policy? So probably not low, but if there are any critical vulnerabilities and the package is new, you can choose to quarantine the package. And then you can say, okay, well, who can unquarantine something? Maintainers, owners, or developers. Well, let's just say maintainers. And then you add this policy. So this looks very similar to that screen I just showed you. We have a new policy here. This is kind of, if you're familiar with the GitLab package registry, this is the same view. So as an example, just hop over to the page. This is what we have today. We could see I have a list of packages here. I could see how they were published, by whom and when. And the nice thing is I could see, oops, just click on it. I could see that there are which pipeline and commit and build it was generated by. So you'll still have all that here, but there'll be this new tab here called quarantine. And these are the packages that matched the criteria so they should have had a critical vulnerability. So for example, I can click into the details and I could see here, looking at I could look at all the vulnerabilities. And of course, you'll be able to filter here by type and name. And then I could also look into the dependencies. So I could see, okay, well, this one had a high vulnerability from this component. A lot of times with vulnerabilities, someone needs to go in, check it out and say, okay, this is okay. And from here, you can mark it as safe or you can re-quarantine it. But the idea is that depending on the role you chose, someone can come in and remove it from the quarantine. If it stays quarantined, it means that as a developer, if I go to install this package, I won't be able to install it. It won't work. It's not available for download at the moment. But as soon as it's marked as safe, then it can use it. So one other thing I mentioned, it's not on the roadmap. I think it's a little further out than this year, but hopefully for next year would be, instead of just filtering on known CVEs, which it's that gives you one sense of, it's kind of reactionary in the sense that the vulnerability already exists. And what about zero-day exploits? And that's why the secure team at GitLab is adding those new data sources like KevScore and EPSS and risk score. And the idea is to look at the metadata around a package and build a better sense of risk for the package and its dependencies. So you could say, for example, well, there's no author name or no email name, or they don't do code reviews, or no one's updated this in 10 years. That might get a higher risk score. And then you'd be able to set up a policy that filtered based on risk as well. So it's a little bit more proactive. And that's really what we want to get to, is kind of starting with the allow deny list and vulnerabilities. It's very reactive, but it's still an added layer of security. And then the more proactive that we can make this feature over time, the more layers of protection we can add to the firewall. I'll pause there. I just want to highlight one other thing really quick, which is something that we're adding. That's another one of our major tentpoles for this year, is adding source for support for protected artifacts. So we have support for, if I go into my example project, I could see in the package registry, we have support for protected packages. So I could say, for instance, I want to protect anything with a semantic version. And right now we support NPM and Python. Maven and Conan are coming out next month, and then generic packages the month or two after that. And it basically allows you to say, okay, for any NPM packages that follow a semantic version, you have to be at least an owner to push. And for the container registry, we have something similar. We have protected repositories, which is the top level image. And then we also have support for protected tags, which is the the specific version of a given container. So the same thing, I could do protect anything with a semantic version and say the minimum rollout to push and delete. And then something that was on our roadmap that I just wanted to highlight is in addition to this will have immutable tags as well. So this would be an additional setting here that you'd be able to say, okay, no one can, once this tag has been pushed, it can't be updated or deleted by anyone. So yeah, just to highlight some of the other security and compliance features that we're working on this year. That was a lot of talking. Can I pause for questions or feedback?
How is the security that CV's database updated? Let's say with new vulnerabilities getting added, how will the tool look for that?
Yeah, that GitLab has our own security vulnerability database. I believe it's updated continuously. I forget, let me look it up actually, because I'll tell you the data source. I couldn't remember if it was Trivy or Gripe. Let's see. Container scanning.
Yeah, it should be Trivy because we are deprecating Gripe.
That's right. Yeah, it's Trivy. So it's updated continuously and it's Trivy. We deprecated Gripe.
Just adding our 50 cents here. I think that since we're self-managed, it's not continuously updated, but we make a cache.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for adding that. Are you using any type of dependency firewall today would this be a new feature for you to adopt?
I think this
That
will
is
be a
a
new feature for us to adopt, right?
correct. That's a
So
new one, and that's where we are trying to see how this product can fit in. And we are already looking at other tools, but we want to see if dependency firewall is available, then go for that. But since it's not yet release ready, that's where we want to see the current features that are still being developed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
well, I was just gonna ask, so when you approve a package in this scenario, does it approve it then for the entire organization, or can you say, yes, this package is approved for these users, or these projects, or can you be more specific, or is it an all on, all off kind of
Yeah, at the current
situation?
moment, that's a really good point. Yeah, so what would the use case would be that you might say, well, it's okay for this team to use because I want them to check it out a little bit further, or
Well, yeah, they could be experimenting, or they just might, their software architecture might not expose a particular CVE, so it's not exploitable, whereas another software architecture, it might be more exploitable. Or maybe it's an internal product versus a product that goes out, or maybe it's related to safety. There are a lot of different situations because we create a variety of different products where a package might be okay in a certain scenario, but not in others.
yeah, that's a good point. That's not included in the design. The design is kind of an all or none. You're either in or you're out. But I can add a note to that, and we can consider that as we get closer to product development. It's a really
I think
interesting.
that would be very valuable to us. And then I have another question too. So if a package gets approved, well, maybe it violates the policy, and then somebody comes along and says, yes, you can actually have this package after all. Are we able to see who's downloaded it in terms of like a person or a pipeline, or so like, I don't know if all of a sudden there's a new decision where no, that's not allowable anymore, we'd be able to go identify, okay, these are the programs that have that. Or maybe like a new vulnerability comes out to be able to go see it. And I ask that in two ways. One, I assume like if you have a GitLab pipeline, it's probably pretty easy. You could just kind of find the packages that are out there. But there might also be other users that use the pipeline to download a package and maybe use it on a different project. Would you be able to see it like through the history of downloads? Does that make sense?
Yes, we don't currently support that. That is something that we do hear frequently, is like kind of just registry analytics. So who's downloading a project, how are packages being used? It's something that we have on our roadmap for next year.
Thank you.
No problem.
But there is that audit feature that GitLab does have that tells you who does what. And if this is what I think this is a security policy, so it will tell you if a group in particular is against the policy, right? It will sort of pick it up there in the audit report.
That's right.
And
The package events are in the audit trail, so you could see who's downloaded what and everything from there. But I'm thinking about like when you go to the registry, you could see a Spark line. You could click on a package, and it'll show you right away like who's downloaded, what's its usage. We don't have that, but it is in the audit trail. So if you had to really get to the data, you could get there.
So we'd open up a bunch of files and search through, like, say, a new Log4j. Who's ever, downloaded Log4j in the last couple of years, we might find it in there.
Yes, yeah.
in the audit reports, yeah. And to Justin's first question, since this is a security policy, if we had like an org group where we put every other groups that onboard to GitLab, right? And I put the policy at the top level org group, then everybody will have that policy set up for them, the firewall, right? What if a subgroup sets a different policy that changes that top level policy firewall? Does it replace it or?
Right now in the current design, it's set up so that it cascades down from the top level group to the subgroups and projects. That's a good idea to have it basically to do the group and then the projects, but to leave subgroups alone. That's an interesting idea. I can capture that as well.
So in a situation like that, would you then be able to whitelist like certain packages within that group and it would still restrict it in the others? Okay.
Right, that's what I was asking. Because
Okay.
if you put that policy at the top level that it's more restrictive, but then you have a group that you onboard under that top level group that it's more experimental and you want to do different policies, then if creating
Yeah.
the new policies at that sub level will replace the top level ones.
Okay. Or maybe they have some sort of architecture or feature that prevents it from being exploitable in this area, but not in the others. We can say, okay, we'll add this
Right.
to your particular policy. Okay. Or I guess this would be on the roadmap. Is that what you're saying, Tim, to potentially do?
Yeah, exactly. The design is ambiguous on this front because it says it says cascade to all the projects, but it doesn't say anything about subgroups. So I think that's a really clever workaround, Joan, and we can make sure that makes its way into the design. Great. Well, any other questions? Or
I think there was one question that Sarvo was asking about, how do you guys feel like maybe you compare to your competitors, or where do you guys like stand out, or how is your solution different, or what distinguishes it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so just in terms of the firewall and the design. Yeah, I would say Sonatype has a great firewall. I hear a lot of people let me say this. A lot of people that I talk to that are using Artifactory or they're using Sonatype, and then I ask them if they're using the firewall and they say no. People are using scanning from JFrog X-Ray, but the firewall is less used. From Sonatype, I have talked to a decent amount of customers that have used it, and they really like the data. They have touted that Sonatype has researchers that are adding in, security vulnerabilities, and they're doing the risk score, and they found it helpful. But the usage is still light, I think. I would say it's a product that I hear a lot of interest in, but when I actually ask customers, "Are you doing this today?" and they say no, or they're doing just the allow deny list. So I think there's a lot of room for potential here. I would definitely say Sonatype has the better of the the firewalls because they have the rigorous set of policies, and they do put in some extra work with in terms of having the on-staff researchers that are working to improve and analyze that data.
And that's in comparison to JFrog curation you're comparing it to, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just from what I've heard. I haven't
Okay.
I've talked to a lot of customers that want to move off of Artifactory for one reason or another, and I always ask about the firewall features, and it's very infrequently used. But for Sonatype, for some reason, a lot of Sonatype customers are it could just be that Sonatype's digging in hard to try and make the firewall a prominent feature of their platform, but from what I've heard, the customers that are using it, they are happy with it.
I have one more question. I know we talked about Gripe and we were also talking about X-Ray. What if the company is driven by the security scanners like Wiz, for example?
Uh, Could you use your own security scanner in place of whatever GitLab has?
Yeah.
That's another interesting idea. Could you do that today for the continuous scanning features? Could you choose to use a third-party database for the scanning?
We have been experimenting with it, but there's like a lot of extra work that has to be put in place to configure that. For example, for X-Ray or Black Dog, for Wiz, right?
Yeah, I think it would be the same, but what we're trying to do, as long as the database lives within GitLab, it should be easier because when we were first designing this, I'm like, well, I really want the open source scorecard foundation data. I was like, well, it has to live within GitLab. The other piece is the type of lookups that you're doing and when those happen. So like looking up a vulnerability database, looking up a risk score or something like that is a lot easier than we have some internal tools that will download the package into a container and run it and look for malicious code. That's difficult to do on the fly when you're just pulling things in from the upstream. So the types of rules that run, as long as it's something simple where you're looking for a vulnerability or you're looking at a score, it should be easier, but I don't know the process for getting that new data connected to it. It might be just as difficult as setting up custom scanning rules.
Okay. Makes sense.
Well, this was helpful for me. I want to just capture 3 ideas that came up that I'll definitely expand on the issue. So one is allowing um, certain projects or certain groups to be able to download things that would have otherwise violated the most strict policy. And then also having the ability to set up a different data source other than Trivy if that exists. That's all very useful. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you for answering the questions and showing us this.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of potential. I mean, granted, it's not here yet, right? That's the big thing, but I think what you're designing and developing, I guess there are maybe other people on this call that know a little better than me, but it sounds like it could be, a good opportunity for us as well in our organization. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Tim, one question. So, when is this going to be available to us?
Yeah, let me bring up the roadmap again. And so what we're hoping for is Q3 of this year to have the allow deny list for the registries, and then adding in the filtering for known CVEs by the end of the year, by Q4.
Okay.
And then I don't know how many versions how many versions behind are you typically in for self-managed?
I think currently we are 16.9
Oh
or
yeah.
Currently, we are at 17.8.
17 dot. Okay.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, not far behind. Some customers I talked to are like a year and a half behind. So yeah, it should be just a month or two after for it to hit your instance.
Naveen, you had one question you want to ask?
No, I'm just trying to understand. So when we are creating policies, we are saying that what scan or what high critical you recognize and all. Say for example, now tomorrow one critical it came, but we are critical or high. Can we give a justification that this one don't consider as a violation or vulnerabilities? So that next time when we apply the same policy, it shouldn't be recognized as that as a vulnerability. Is it possible something like that? I hope you understood my use case.
Yeah, like let's say for instance it was quarantined, it had a critical vulnerability, but it's okay. You said we reviewed this and we don't want it to be filtered again. I
Yeah,
think
we can
yeah,
justify over there, and that with that justification, can it say the next time it won't be recognized as a vulnerability? Is it possible? Something like that.
yeah, that is how it's intended to work.
Okay. Okay. Right, thanks.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, that's all I had for today, and I'm happy as we make progress to convene again and show demos of as we add features would be really helpful, and to get your feedback as we add those features, that would be great. But if we can do it once we have a little more progress, that would be nice. So maybe later this year.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Tim. Really appreciate you taking the time and having a good discussion and good showing out the prototype. And thank you everybody for joining. If you have any suggestions or questions, definitely feel free to email me and I'll pass them on to Tim. And yeah, hope we can do this again. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.